FPL game week 1 is just 2 weeks away now. So today I'm going to take you through an update of my draft. Lots is happening in preseason. We're getting injury updates. We're having players return from the Euros. A spoiler in this draft, I've gone back to the original plan, which was having both Mo Salah and Erling Haaland in my draft. I found a structure that I like. So today I'm going to take you through that team in my new FPL draft. What is up, everyone? Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. And today it is an update of my draft, where my thinking is, what my plan is, talking Haaland, Salah. We'll talk about a few of the other players that I'm considering in my team as we go through. If you haven't already, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you are new around here. Lots of content comes throughout the season, and we have a video pretty much every single day now between now and the start of the season, as we try and continue our ranks that we've had over the past few years. Of course, top 6K for 4 years in a row. Can we make it the 5 in a row this year? That is going to be the aim, but a few rule changes, of course, will make FPL a little bit different this year than we've seen in the past. But we're going to dive in, have a look at the draft. I still find goalkeepers really difficult to pick. We've gone with Valdemarson of Brentford as our backup. Again, I've spoken about there being no real 4.0 goalkeepers at the moment. We're going to keep an eye out between now and the start of the season. Any potential changes in goal as we go into some of the final preseason friendlies. Valdemarson has the ability to replace Flecken. He is an Iceland internationally capped goalkeeper. It seems unlikely that any of the 4.0s are going to start by the time the start of the season comes. I've now opted for Henderson as my starting goalkeeper. I've gone from Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, and now into Crystal Palace. Chelsea and Nottingham Forest both at the moment feel like an absolute minefield in terms of picking the starting goalkeeper. Dean Henderson did come in straight back in once he was back with the squad to start in his Crystal Palace friendly on Wednesday. I do think he is the number one, and I do think there's a good chance that Sam Johnson at Crystal Palace will actually leave before the deadline. So I do think Henderson is their number one. I do think Palace will be solid this year. They were fantastic at the end of last year. A lot of us looking at their attacking assets and their defensive assets that time, and I think 4.5 is a nice option for him. None of the goalkeepers, though, really stand out. I don't look at anyone and feel really confident in picking them. So at the moment, we're going with Henderson, but I don't have that much confidence in any of them. So that will be something we are reviewing as time goes on between now and the start of the season. Now, when we look at the defense, things are starting to become a little bit more solid. These are defenders we're starting to see in my drafts over and over again. I'm starting to see a structure that I'm really liking, and a few players are changing depending on rotations and things like that. But I'm starting to get to a position I feel like the squad structure of my draft is looking pretty similar every time I'm building one and every time I go and tinker. Gvardiol is in there as my Manchester City defender. In the most recent friendly, he actually played at centre-back, which is very unlikely that he does that during the season. We expect him to fill in at that left-back spot. We've seen a lot from him. He did pick up an assist in that game, but it's not really that much to sort of take away from that, because there was no John Stones, there was no Diaz, there was no Akanji still because of the Euros. So Gvardiol was filling in at centre-back alongside Calvin Phillips, which is not something we're going to see from Manchester City pretty much ever throughout the season. But I do like him, and the fixtures are very good, and Chelsea have not been that great in pre-season, so I don't mind too much with playing him in that one. Next to him, we have opted to free up the money to go for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Robertson is one I do still like, but of course he looks like he's a doubt going into the start of the season. I do fancy Trent. I think 7 million is a decent price for him, and Liverpool have a great run of opening fixtures throughout the first 5 or 6 weeks, so very happy to start with the two of them. Then the other three are a rotation I've spoken about a few times over the past week. It is that Mykolenko 2 4.0 option, so basically a Mykolenko-Barco rotation that fits really, really well. Mykolenko has 2 hard fixtures in about the first 10, and they fall in game week 2 and they fall in game week 4. Barco plays Manchester United at home and Ipswich at home in those 2 fixtures. He's on set pieces, and we don't expect to see Purvis Estupiñán back in that Brighton team until we get to October. Wout Faes is, I've actually gone with him over Haaland+. There is one game week further down the line when there is a slight difficult fixture for Mykolenko. He plays Newcastle at home, I think in game week 6. Wout Faes has a decent enough fixture at home to Bournemouth, and if things go wrong, I could potentially play him in that. That 4.0 final spot is pretty fluid at the moment, so if something comes up, I could rotate that, but I've gone with Wout Faes, just a slightly better rotation for me over going for Haaland+. Into midfield, again, things are starting to look a little bit similar, but I've gone for Salah and I've gone with Haaland. So we don't have that sort of mid-price Foden, Palmer, Saka, Son option at the moment. If I had to actually buy one of those right now, it would probably be Son. He looked really good in pre-season. And I just worry about those other players coming back from England in the Euros, how quickly they're going to be able to embed back in with their clubs. We've already heard from Pep that Foden might not be back quite ready for the start of the season, which is another reason I forced Haaland back into my draft, because I want Manchester City cover and I don't want to be worrying about whether we're going to see a start from Phil Foden in game weeks 1 and game week 2. So Salah is in here again. He has looked good in pre-season. Liverpool starting to find a little bit of groove in their most recent game. Salah did, of course, score. Ipswich away on the opening day, and then they have some good fixtures, as we spoke about with Trent. Nkunku, for me, is one of the best value picks in the game. I know a lot of you agree, but there are definitely some people who think that Nkunku is the trap of the start of the season, and I do understand that. I am impressed with him in pre-season, but he has also scored 2 goals from penalties, which we have heard from Maresca he will not be taking once Cole Palmer does come back. He has been rotating very fluidly with that front line, and I think at 6.5, I really like him. It doesn't mean that I think Cole Palmer is a bad option. I just think in game week 1, Nkunku is a better value pick than you're going to get with Cole Palmer. And trying to save a bit of money, of course, that's a very easy way for me to go and do it. Next up is Eze at Crystal Palace, 7 million. He is being linked with a few moves here and there, but I do think he will be the one that starts the season. The only issue is without Elise and without Mateta, exactly how they look at the start of the season. If Mateta is back in time for the Olympics, maybe that boosts it, but I do fancy him. And I do think 7 million is underpriced. I do compare him to the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard, and the likes of Gordon, and think the only reason he's not priced at similar to some of those is the injury record. And they managed him really well at the end of last season, so I'm pretty happy with him in at 7 million. Callum Hudson-Odoi and Rodgers are the final 2 midfielder spots who will rotate for the final starting spot. It's probably the only position in my lineup at the moment that I'm not 100% confident. Nottingham Forest have just signed a winger who plays on the left where Hudson-Odoi plays. I hope this is just to be a backup and to push Hudson-Odoi on, but it will be something I keep an eye on in pre-season. Good opening fixtures as well, including Bournemouth at home in the first day when I can actually bench Nkunku because, of course, he plays Manchester City. Rodgers, again, looks like he's just getting continued minutes for Aston Villa out on that left wing. So as long as he's starting the beginning of the season, first 4 or 5 weeks, that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But he has looked great, and 5 million is great. It's such a big sort of investment over a 4.5 million. You get such better value for your money. So it is worth it when you're trying to squeeze in Salah and Haaland, having players like Rodgers that you can rotate in. Then we got up front. So as I've said, Haaland is in. We aren't fully 100% certain on his fitness, and we'll talk about players that might come in if Haaland's not confirmed fit. I do think Haaland will be available for the start of the season. I'm not massively worried about him coming off with a slight knock in the last game. Of course, they play friendlies between now and the start of the season, and we'll hear plenty of truths or not truths from Pep between now and then exactly how he's getting on. But I do want City cover, and I do think Haaland is in for a good season. And let's say he scores against Chelsea in game week 1, which is very possible the way that we are defending at the moment. And then I look at Ipswich in game week 2 and I have no way of getting him in. I'm going to be absolutely bricking it and hiding behind the sofa in that fixture. So it's easier to start with Salah, Haaland, than to try and squeeze them in a few weeks. So Isak is kind of a no-brainer. For me, he's the most essential player in the game. And then the other forward, it's gone from Chris Wood and it's now Muniz of Fulham. I think that game week 1 fixture put me off going with Muniz a little bit. But the more I look at it, I think with the signings of Smith Rowe, some of the others they're linked with McTominay, I think they look like a really exciting outfit at the start of the season. Now, I could go with a Chris Wood and a Andreas Pereira over Hudson-Odoi and Muniz and go for 1 Forest, 1 Fulham that way round. I don't really want to double up on either of them, so I'm going with 1 Fulham, 1 Forest, and I've gone with it this way round just because Taiwo Awoniyi is slightly more of a threat to Chris Wood's minutes than maybe some of the others do have. Hudson-Odoi played almost all the minutes at the end of last season, and Muniz is given the number 9 shirt, and as much as we might love Jimenez, he's not the player that he used to be and when he was younger, of course. So this is my draft. It leaves me absolutely nothing in the bank. I have got Haaland and Salah back in. The reason for me going with that is, again, I'm not 100% certain on Palmer, Foden in particular being back for the start of the season. I like the look of Son, but of course from game weeks 3 onwards, they have a couple of difficult fixtures. And I trust the cheap assets that I've got. I trust Nkunku. I think he's good value. I really trust Eze. I think Muniz is a good pick. It's just that 11th man in Hudson-Odoi and Rodgers that I'm looking at and thinking, am I 100% certain that they can get me enough points? And with the fixtures that they've got at the start of the season, I currently think, yes, they are. In terms of the bench for game week 1, it would be Barco, it would be Wout Faes, and probably Nkunku, of course, with Valdemarson in there. I'm looking at an Alexander Isak captain in game week 1, despite owning Mo Salah and Haaland. Just because Salah is away from home in the 12:30 kickoff, we know how much Liverpool hate to play that fixture. So that's where I'm going with at the moment. But again, Isak Currently the plan for captaincy, Salah vice captain, but from game week 2 onwards, Salah and Haaland will be getting the captaincy armband pretty much every week. So just to talk about a few players that I am considering that aren't in this draft. The first up is Jacob Murphy at Newcastle. He's been so good in preseason and finished the end of last season really well. If it doesn't look like Newcastle are going to sign a right winger, then I may well go there over going with Hudson-Odoi as my 5.5 million midfielder in this sort of setup and sort of price points that we've got. The only thing is Newcastle are currently linked with a few right wingers and they are being spoken about that they do want that position. And if Anthony Gordon, who is being very strongly linked with Liverpool, does go, they will have a lot of money in the bank to go and sign a couple of new wingers, which they probably do need. Maybe Harvey Barnes at 6.5 million might become an option then, but at the moment, he doesn't feel nailed enough for me, so he's not gone in. Up front, João Pedro is back in training. I spoke about Chris Wood as well. Both of these could take the spot that Muniz has at the moment. Wood is very 50-50, both the same price. João Pedro is slightly cheaper. He does have a more difficult start to the season, but then he is on penalties, so there is pros and cons there. We have seen João Pedro back in training, but because of the opening fixtures, I have opted for Muniz over either of these. And the final one is actually Kwanzaa at Liverpool. He's 4.5 million, playing a lot of minutes in pre-season. He played very well at the end of last season. Now, Konate is not back because he was at the Euros with France, so he hasn't returned and played any minutes yet. That's what I'm keeping an eye on though, because some Liverpool fans do think that Kwanzaa is slightly better on the ball and might suit an Arne Slot system slightly better than Konate does. So if it does look like Kwanzaa is going to start going into game week 1, he could be a fantastic option at 4.5. So these are the top 4 players at the moment that are on radar. Of course, I like the look of Son, I like the look of Watkins, I like the look of a lot of other players, but in terms of the squad structure and players that have almost found their way in, these are probably the top 4. So finally, of course, we are looking at Haaland's fitness and what I would do if Haaland was not available. If Haaland is looking like a doubt when it gets to game week 1, even if he doesn't feature in a couple of friendlies over the next week, I still think he will be back for game week 1. So I'm still planning to build drafts with him in because I do want him if he is available. But if we get to game week 1 and he's not, the type of thing I would do was Haaland down to Watkins and upgrade Rodgers all the way up to Son. At the moment, I'm going with Son over Foden, Saka, Palmer, just because of the minutes going into pre-season and the amount of sort of lack of pre-season minutes that they've got because of returning late from the Euros, whereas Spurs do look good. The only thing about Son is at the moment he's on penalties, at the moment he's playing very central, but they are linked with both Dominic Solanke and Ivan Toney amongst a few other forwards, and they are saying that they do, and just, banging on about the fact that they want a forward. And if they do sign one of them, Son might even lose penalties, and at 10 million, without penalties, comparing him to someone like a Palmer or a Saka, I wouldn't want to go there. So at the moment, because of those links, I don't think Son is worth it. If we got to the start of the season and they don't sign a striker, then maybe I do look there. Watkins, I really like the look of, but I've just favoured Haaland over him just if those captaincy early on. But if Haaland is out, these are the type of switches that we're going to make. So that is my updated draft. The next draft will be probably about a week before the start of the season when we're really getting into crunch time. Everyone's back in preseason. Everyone's starting to field their strongest lineups. That is when I will have the next update. We'll have lots of videos pretty much from Monday onwards. There'll be a video every single day until the Premier League, the FPL season does start. Thank you all so much for watching. Any questions you have about my team? What do you think of the Haaland-Salah+Trent draft? Do you think it's strong enough in midfield, or do you think I'm sacrificing too much? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, please make sure to join my charity league code where I donate 10p to charity for every single one of you who does beat me. There is an auto join link in the description or just a code in the description as well if you haven't joined that. Thank you all so much for watching. Any questions about your team, FPL this season, hit it all in the comment section down below. 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.